Welcome back. Welcome back to the Eyecare Experts, Dr. Bell, Dr. Trezin. We're here again with Dr. Martin. Thank you for joining us again for this episode. And this is one that, you're talking nearly 48 million people are affected by this in the United States alone as far as migraines. And this is something we always, as far as our techs, ask about, because certainly, we want to figure out, is it just a headache? Is it a migraine? Do you see visual auroras, with that? So I guess for people who've never really had a true migraine, don't really understand how it can be debilitating. I mean, it's not just a headache where you can go throughout your workday. Some of these are so tough where people, just have to lay down, and it can affect you in a lot of ways. Whether it's your work environment, whether it's trying to go to school, so this can be a serious issue. I think a lot of people don't realize how serious it can be. So migraines in general, this is another thing we want to take into account. Medications, what are you on? Just in general, what do you think as far as migraines? What would you say?
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, our texts ask about headaches, migraines, because sometimes headaches and things may be related to your eyes. It may be that you need prescription glasses, things like that. But also a lot of people that suffer from migraines experience light sensitivity, or they're triggered by light, which is all related to the eyes. I know I do suffer from migraines, luckily not as often as some people, but I can definitely attest that I know it's tough, and I know there's a lot of different medications, and people try different things with different side effects, and so it's definitely affects a lot of people.
I think that's the tough part about, at least from my eyes, talking to a number of patients, day in and day out, is what's the trigger? What causes it? So it's almost like trial and error, like allergies would be, to try to figure out exactly what's causing you to have that. And then after that, how do we go about stopping it? And there's a lot of things that play a role in that. And I think that's the reason going through medication is trying to figure out for that individual what's going to work, or at least lessen the effects of it. Right. What do you think from your experience, with patients?
Oh, absolutely. It's been around a long time. And the economic cost of people missing school, missing work, it's a game changer. And there's really been they do the medication route, which leads me into this next thing. I just came back from the Vision Expo, which is the it's the largest in the world, and it's in Las Vegas. And I just came back, so was Dr. Bell at the meeting, and I arranged to meet the CEO of this company that developed this lens. I'm going to tell you a little story now. Story in the sense that it has a lot of personal aspects to it, but not story in the sense that this is made up. So this GI surgeon has two daughters, and their migraines increased in severity such that they both dropped out of school. They got so bad that the smallest little light would trigger a headache for him. So around the house, he never put the lights on, and he had a little construction hat with a little light on it that he used with a very narrow beam, so he could do what he had to do. But by his own words, which I had a half-hour appointment with him on Saturday, he has a tape that I got this from. My questions were more specific and technical. And as I said to him, our first comment, you may be surprised at this, I said, you're either the biggest con I've ever run across, or you're genuine and you've made a life-changing discovery for a lot of people. After a half hour with this gentleman, I'm convinced it was the latter. So anyway, he had the two girls, he brought them, he's a gastrointestinal surgeon, so he brought them to Harvard, he brought them to Mass Eye and Ear, he brought them to MD Anderson Clinic, he brought them to the Cleveland Clinic. He got nowhere. So he decided, and the girls got more and more behind in school, things just got out of hand. And he said he felt like a prisoner in his own house because he couldn't walk around and put the lights on. He couldn't watch TV if they were in the room, and he didn't want them stuck in their room all the time. So it was a problem of significant proportion. He hires a physicist, sets up a lab, buys an off-the-shelf spectroscope, and reads the literature. It turns out in the 30s and 40s, the two wavelengths, well, they hadn't quite pinned them down, that there were wavelengths in the light that triggered the headache. And long story short, he hired a physicist, did all this, tested for come out with two wavelengths, one at 280 and one at 480. A wavelength is a measure of the width of an energy spectrum of light. Sounds work the same way. They have wavelengths to them too. When they're all pushed together, that's a high sound. When they're very low, it's the waves are pushed out, and they're very few frequency. And that's how many you have in a given segment. He pins these two down, but it turns out no one could get them in a lens that specific. You had to fool around and knock out a whole bunch of lenses, which would affect your vision. He tries PhDs in this country, optics companies, you name it, he did it, got nowhere. 7 years after that, he finds the Israeli military that one of their lasers was used to debilitate people on the other side, and they developed a block for those lasers. I don't want to get into any political aspects of this. Just leave it to the wavelengths. He hires them, spends his own money, and gets a block and develops a lens that can handle those two wavelengths. He puts it on his daughters. Within 2 days, their headache stopped. He goes to neighbors. He does the same thing. He brings it to work. It turns out he was former CEO of the Cleveland Clinic. He didn't want people to invest in it because they had a hard time believing he was the real deal. He invested his own money. So 3.5 years later, he gets FDA approval, which occurred a month and a half ago. He's got FDA approval for the lens. I, based on that thing, have gotten to be, you take a little class and you're eligible to do this. And you can visit neurologists in your town, and you're able to promote the lens once you've been trained. In addition to that, my lab is one of the few certified labs. I make my own eyeglasses for Theresa Optical. They know all this, and I've been in business in that for a long time. And I will make his lens here in Pensacola. So we will fit this, and if we have the same results, this will be a game changer. And you'll be the first to know about it. In addition, to make this lens comparable, it's fairly expensive. Insurance does not cover it. So to cover that cost, I will fit you with the lenses. If your migraine headaches disappear and you're a happy camper, you pay the fee. If they don't, you'll get 100% of your money back. No questions asked. So that'll remove, and going to a doctor who prescribes a medication for you, and the medication doesn't work, you then have to get another medication, and that's just out of your pocket. So I've removed that barrier from this by having a money-back guarantee on this. Therefore, you don't like it for whatever reason, you get your full refund on your money. Gets rid of your headaches. Obviously, I've done you some good. So there's a huge population out there. We'll be going to all neurology offices that we can find and promoting this with their company reps. That'll occur in the next month. So I'm very excited about having this lens. I have not used it as yet. I'm trying it on staff. One staff member had positive and the other one had a negative. So I'm 1 and 1. But that's a very small target number to work with. But if it works well, I will do well with this, and the public will do well. That's the only treatment of its kind.
No, that's well said. There's very few doctors and very few things would stand by that and say, hey, no, there's no loss. There's no risk really because you're trying this. And I know for migraine sufferers who have tried quite a bit in the past and have gone through different medications and have had little to no help. They're willing to try just about anything at this point. Just think of someone who's in pain. At this point, if you say this could make it better, I'm going to try it. So, and they can use, going back to what you said as far as the lens, they can use their frame or they can still use their frame from the insurance. It's just you're saying the insurance wouldn't cover the total cost of the lens for the Avalux is what you're saying. So that patient would have to pay that additional fee, on the lens, but they wouldn't have to pay necessarily the frame fee if the frames are included with their insurance.
Correct.
Okay. And just one thing, I can't say it any better than you did, but the Avalux lens, it filters up to 97% of the most harmful blue, amber, and red lights, while allowing 70% of the soothing green lights. So when they did the tests for all these migraine sufferers, They realized that the blue, amber, and red lights were triggers and caused migraines, and the green lights tend to soothe it, meaning make it better or make it go away or not triggered as much.
Now, what's amazing about this is because people would have questioned the financial interest in the thing and promoting this lens. This was promoted and discovered by a gastrointestinal surgeon, not an ophthalmologist, not an optometrist, not a PhD in optics, not an optician, not people in the industry. He blew by them all. And I asked him, how did you get to do that? He said, well, my girls were suffering so much, I was motivated by that. Necessity is the mother of invention. And he looked me straight in the eye and told me that, and I believed him. And that's why he spent all his money, and with this FDA approval, he stands to do well.
Yeah. Also, they did a study and had some people wear the lens, and then some people have like a placebo or a lens that didn't have the coating. And in the study, it was clinically significant that they had better migraine relief and less triggers when they wore the Avalux lens. So that also goes to show that it's, it's actually working. They did a study and kind of proved it.
Yep.
We certainly see patients all day long. There's very few things we do that it probably has 100% results in patients. I mean, most of the time, if we can get you, we talk about multifocal contact lenses and other things, and usually for that, I usually say about 75, 80% success rate. And if we can get that I think that's good.
Yeah.
Heck, anything close to 70, I would think would be pretty good.
Well, the point with this lens too, if it doesn't get rid of your headaches, if it lessens the frequency, you still came out ahead.
Yeah, or lessens your symptoms maybe. Like
Yeah.
if you're feeling light sensitive and you put them on and it helps with that, that seems like a perk as well.
A lot of people have onset from this from looking at computer screens. So if you wore this while you were on the computer screen and it did not initiate a migraine headache, you've come out ahead on this deal.
Well, we've spoken extent as far as Avalux lenses, but in general, come in. If you haven't had an eye exam, let's say you're working on the computer, let's say you're doing work all day long and you're getting headaches and migraines. Maybe it is you need the Avalux lens, but maybe it's just because you have a prescription. Maybe you have a bit of astigmatism. Maybe you have an eye turn issue, strabismus or something that only happens after you look at things for a while. So come in. There are plenty of patients we have and we see that actually see pretty good, but they still could benefit from some slight correction because of the fatigue, the strain they're putting on the eyes and the visual system by staring at phones or staring at computers and things like that all day long. I know we've talked about blue light in the past, but there's plenty of patients that wouldn't pick up and say, hey, they would say, hey, I see pretty good, and they don't really realize what they have going on until they come in for that exam. We can say, hey, that left eye, you've got this, the right eye, you've got this, and even though you're not required to wear them full time, it would help you if you wore them at least part time.
Yeah, I've definitely had some patients just like that where they see really well, but they're getting a lot of headaches. And so I say, well, give the glasses a try and just see if it helps. And they'll come back and say, I have so many less headaches now that I'm wearing the glasses. So yeah, lots of different causes.
So that's one of the questions I always ask is if you have headaches or migraines, when do you usually get them? If there's any rhythm, do you wake up with them? Do you get them after you're looking at something for a while? That helps us, so we want to figure out kind of what you're doing and, what's triggering them if we can. And that's the secret to the whole thing is figuring out what the trigger is to kind of relieve that trigger somehow. And maybe it is lights, maybe it is those, blue, amber, and red that's triggering the migraine and where the Avalux lens would help you.
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole new category of lenses. This has occurred in the last 2 years, and these lenses weren't even around. And Zeiss, the oldest company in the optical business, has come up with, and then they were mimicked, of course, by the other big players, anti-fatigue lenses. And so when people are looking at, so it turns out that 70 to 80% of their day is spent at a distance 10 feet or less. And so you can get lenses that will maximize vision in that 10-foot square. Now, you couldn't drive with them, but you could use them for that. And that's going to be they saw that as a huge market. They were correct. And we've just started getting these in our lab, and we will be prescribing those shortly.
And like you said, we're one of the few, certainly in the area, that is doing that. And it's nice to go right to the source. I mean, that's not many people who would take the time, credit on you to talk individually with this individual about how he came up with it, what his thoughts are, and to be able to just ask him point blank questions.
Well, it becomes a question of, I associate myself with this lens now. So I have a reputation here in town, and I want to protect that and make sure that if I talk about it, it has credibility. That's why I did that.
Well, we've said this, but certainly with us at any of our locations, we take pretty much every vision, every medical insurance that's out there. So you don't have to have vision insurance to come see us. If you have medical insurance for your body, you're going in for your primary care physician. Most often, we take that. I think like I said, 98, 99%. Give us a call at one of our offices. Visit at trezooptical.com. We'd love to have you. And we have people who can figure things out, help you with your insurance. Maybe you don't know what you have. We're going to work through and try to figure all that out and get you scheduled for a full exam or an office visit or whatever you're looking for. Whatever your eye care needs are, we certainly want to be there and help you for that. Before we wrap up this, anything we didn't cover on migraines or anything, you guys? We talked about the Avalux lens. Do you see an increase in headaches and migraines lately? Would you say? 'Cause you've been doing it for a while, but
I'd say yes.
Yes.
Compared to the old days, I see more now than before. The other thing about migraine headaches, mysteriously enough, and I talked this over with Dr. Chuck, that at age 65 to 70, the migraine headaches, most of them will disappear. Now, what does that do to, and what's causing that? Which shows you how little we know about how these things work. These are associated with other syndromes like Tourette's syndrome. And it turns out that Tourette's, that study, he was telling me about that, could be one of the triggered would be this light sensitivity. The whole field of photobiology is about to bust open. And it has to, that gets into another show or whatever. But I think it's very exciting.
Well, not to go too far down the rabbit hole, we've had lectures in the past where even colors of walls, and just you talking about colors of rooms and moods and how that can just affect the individual. And to me, that when I saw that lecture, I heard that lecture, that was amazing, just taking that into account, just based on what you're looking at, how it affects you. And
so knowledge is increasing at an expanding rate. And if you don't keep up with things, you're going to get so far behind, you'll be irrelevant. And that's why keeping up with a thing like the Avalux lens is important.
It's exciting that we have new options for people.
I agree.
Yep, we're always, and that's the reason, going to conferences and stuff, learning about new machines, new ways to diagnose things earlier. We're trying to do all we can to help the individuals. In the past, we don't want to wait till it gets mid to late stage. We want to get it caught as early as we can. But we want to thank everybody again for joining us for the migraine here. Dr. Martin, thank you again for joining us. Yeah. And until next time, visit us at trezooptical.com or YouTube page, any of our podcasts. If there's any specific condition you're looking for, we've done quite a bit of these in the past. Whether it's myopia, diabetes, glaucoma, cataracts, we have a lot of them. You can kind of search for that individual topic. And if there's one that we don't have, certainly send us a email or text or a response, and we'd love to do that in the future. But thank you, guys.